Hello, this is Truth Be Told Transformation, and I'm Bonnie Burkert, here to share tools for transformation to live your highest truth. One thing that's true for me is that sleep can sometimes be more interesting than real life. And so what's happening when we go to sleep? There's so much I want to know, and that's why I've invited an expert on the subject of Dream Magick to talk to on the show today. I welcome Robin Corak.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
Hi, Robin. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. You know, at the time of taping, we're close to Halloween, and I think that actually sort of feeds into the subject, thinking about how they talk about the veils getting thinner. And so for me, that could be, maybe we don't know how that's going to play out in our waking life. Are we going to have some sort of a contact or have the experience of those who've passed on? But I think that where we might really have that experience is when we sleep.
Yes, I think that's very true. And in fact, if you look in my book, I talk about studies that have been done with different countries, different cultures, and a high percentage of people from all these different cultures have said that they've had visitations from their deceased loved ones in their dreams. So I do, for myself, find that these kind of pick up at this time of the year.
Fabulous. Robin's book is called Dream Magick, Change Your Reality Through the Liminal World of Sleep. Did I get that full title correct, Robin?
Yes, you did.
Well, congrats on the upcoming release. We're really excited. It's out on Llewellyn, our favorite publisher. And so why don't you tell us a little bit more about what's in the book, and then we'll weave it back into what you were saying about different cultures, because I'm very curious about that as far as what we know to be true here in our country, and I don't know, our traditions versus maybe others you've heard about. So what's in the book, though? Sure. Start off with that.
Sure. So the book is really a comprehensive look at Dream Magick, and it's a combination of studies, academics, but also my own personal experiences and experiences of some other people, including people that are famous. And so if you look at the book, there's everything from understanding sleep and understanding dreams. And then we talk a little bit about pre-dream work basics, how to set the stage, for having a good night's sleep and for manifesting certain dreams. We talk about lucid dreaming. We talk about the way dreams are viewed across different cultures. We talk about incubation dreaming, much like occurred in many places in ancient times, especially Greece. Visitations from those who have passed on. Working manifestation with dreams. Dream allies and guides, and dream projection. So and even nightmares and how to deal with nightmares. So it's really, I tried to make it a very comprehensive book covering a wide spectrum of dream related magic.
Fantastic. So I wanted to, you mentioned dream related magic. So I wanted to ask you specifically why you chose the term magic in terms of these studies, because there's a lot of there's different books out there on dreaming, and yet I'd like to see, of course, I'm curious about the magical side of things, and particularly the fact that you spelled magic with the K. Let us know kind of the tone of that, please.
Sure. And I think a lot of people in my field or my spirituality, particularly pagan, or if you're talking about witchcraft, the K is usually used to differentiate from the magic we know as stage magic, for example, David Copperfield, all those individuals. And I talked about it in terms of magic because, first of all, I think dreams are very magical. If you think about it, you go to sleep and all of a sudden you're in these different worlds without really even trying. And I think there's a magic to that. And I think a lot of it has to do with the magic of our subconscious as well. But the things that are in the book are everything from building a dream altar, to spells that you can use, to crystals and herbs that you can use as allies, to deities and guides. And so it really does focus on dreams from the perspective of, magical workings, and the unknown. And, I think Aleister Crowley was the one who said that defined magic is the art of changing consciousness at will. And that's definitely something that comes into play with dreaming and with dream magic.
Excellent. Yeah, I really like the idea of preparing oneself for the dream time, for sleep, like getting yourself ready. For example, like I try to make sure I don't do digital for a little while before bed. I'm not perfect at it. I like the idea of herbs. I mean, so I love herb teas. I'm drinking I have like a crazy amount of different herbs, and it's just one of my passions. So can you give us a hint at how maybe some herbs play into it? You mentioned that.
Sure. Herbs and oils. There's a lot of different ways that you can use them. You can use them in teas, as you talked about. You can use them in oil diffusers. You can use them making incense. And so, or even like dream pillows, which is something I talk about in the book, making dream pillows or dream dolls, and you can use herbs in there. And it's very interesting how many herbs, if you really do the research, really connect to dreams. Some of this is from folklore going back, years and years, the British Isles and other areas. But for example, mugwort has long been known as a herb to help with psychic ability. And that definitely comes into play with dreaming. Blue lotus is another one that tends to make our dreams very visual. Mint is another one. So there's quite a few. The one I will say, though, that doesn't really work with dreaming so much is marijuana. Yeah. Because while it may help you relax and get to sleep, it really does interfere with your dreams and your dream recall.
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely understand what you're saying with that. It's almost because you're in that dream, you're kind of dreaming when you're conscious. So when you go into, that's very, very interesting. I'm adding one to your list. I like passion flower. I've found that passion flower gives me a very rich sleep. Like it's, I wake up after taking, I've not tried the tincture. I mostly just make a tea. So I think it's considered one for calming. And so I think it probably all works differently, but thanks for the tip on mugwort. I've always heard about that. And have you ever tried any of these in a bath?
Yes. And so that's something I talk about in the book too, is using some of them in a bath. And when you look at the book, it does really talk about what the different herbs are for, because, for example, lavender relaxing is going to help you get to sleep. It's going to help you with nightmares, but it's probably not going to help you with, necessarily connecting with your deceased loved ones. Mm-hmm. But I talk about in the book, really thinking about when you're in the bath, and I love baths, so this is perfect. But really thinking about it, putting those herbs in and thinking about it as your cauldron of transformation. Because if you think about it, you're kind of in between the worlds when you're in a bath, right? You have the water kind of carrying you, but you're still on earth. So I love the use of herbs and oils in baths.
All right, excellent. I've got a great bathtub, and I live in California, so I try not to use too much water. And and then another problem, so I don't use it enough. But another problem is I fall asleep whenever I take a bath, and then I'm awake. So I fall asleep. I've taken this power nap, and then when I go to bed, I'm like wide awake. So, all right. So, what is in your title and your subtitle here? What is liminal? What does liminal mean?
So liminal means between the worlds. And that's really where you are. So when you're sleeping, you're there, you're on earth, but your mind or spirit, however you want to look at it, is somewhere else completely. So you're kind of in between worlds. And that's really what we talk about when we talk about liminal.
Okay, great. So there's that term subliminal. So now I'm putting two and two together.
Yeah. Sub meaning under. Yeah. Interesting.
Subliminal.
Yeah, and it's funny because liminal, the way that we work with it in Dream Magick has a lot to do with your subconscious. Yeah. And that's why I also talk about, people ask me about dream dictionaries all the time. Yes. And not to say they can't be helpful, but I find it's really our subconscious that's running the show when we're dreaming. And so I find it more helpful to create my own dream dictionary and think about stream of consciousness, what different things come up when I think of apple or book. And I've done this with various people, with apple, for example, and you get 5 different answers. And that's why dream dictionaries, well, there are some universal symbols. It's really our subconscious language that we're trying to learn. And so that's a very important piece.
I agree with you. As a person who's got all kinds of, a collection of esoteric books, a dream dictionary is not on my shelf. I just... You know, it just hasn't been, because ever for the longest time, I guess maybe I've looked at them. I didn't find the description to be apt. So I consequently just not a tool that I used. Better that, maybe I talk it through with people. I had one instance that I had asked one friend about a dream where I murdered people. I think either I murdered or I was murdering, and it was, I think, and then this other friend, and then she wasn't available to talk, so I asked another friend, and the friend, all of a sudden they were coming up with the description like, you're killing yourself. Like, I think I was murdering somebody, and they said, no, you're actually killing yourself. And it's funny because the first friend that I had asked that wasn't sure suddenly had this revelation at the exact same time that the other friend was coming to this for me. They were both saying, and it was basically in between jobs, like moving from one job to another. And I think I was like killing off an old way of being type of thing. And I mean, I guess, again, I'm just trying to explain, one, the symbolism that I experienced in that dream, and two, a resource, friends that knew me, friends that knew my scenario of, kind of going through this work career change, shalala, and affirmations, very, very affirming when you hear from two people at the same time. It was really, really cool. That was really great.
Very validating.
So
I think, it's funny. Oh, I was just going to comment on the sharing with people. And I think there's a lot of power to that, too. And one of the things I found when I was doing research is there's a tribe in, I think it's in Ecuador. But every morning they get together and they share their dreams. That's like without fail, every morning. And if somebody had a dream about an argument or a conflict with somebody else in the tribe, even if during the day they were fine, that tribe would make them work it out before they went about their day. So, it's very interesting. I think sharing dreams can be very powerful.
Well, I know what you say about working it out, because in the last few weeks, I have been experiencing dreams that have weighed quite heavily on me all the day long. Like, I can't quite get myself out of it. It's really, and some of there were nightmares. It was just walking through fog the entire day, no amount of caffeine or, chocolate, which obviously has, just like my tools to kind of get myself going, swimming, walking, I was in this haze. So I think you're right. I was trying to work through whatever that was. And so sometimes these dreams become, they cross over into the waking life. Do you have that experience?
I absolutely have had. And that's, when people tell me I don't remember my dreams, I will sometimes even tell, I really believe in dream journals, even though I know they're not sexy, but you don't have to write. You can like draw it or whatever makes sense to you. But I've had dreams where I can't always remember what happened in the dream right away, but there's this strong emotion. And I always encourage people, even if they don't remember the dream, if there's that strong emotion, to write it down, because I think that's our subconscious telling us something important is going on. But yes, I've definitely had dreams like that where the whole day it's just, my mind is on that emotion or whatever was in the dream.
Yes. And sometimes I don't necessarily even remember the specifics, but it's just a feeling. But I'm very pro dream journal. I used to journal a lot. I really did. And at this point, for some reason, I caught myself really writing down the same thing over and over again. So I was like, okay, whoa, here's me stuck in my story, which is great. I mean, because I opened up a journal from many, many years prior, and I'm like, wow, I just wrote the same thing. And so, okay, so that stopped me. Dream journals, I feel, are a little different, because I think in the same way that maybe when you're traveling, you want to notate highlights. If you don't want to wax poetic, it's one thing, but it's amazing how time goes fast. It's good to note things down. But with the dreams, I find that I don't remember. It's crazy what I'm not remembering. Like if I'll go back over what I had dreamed, there's so much there. There's so much there. Maybe seemed inane at the time, but then it makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
Maybe even, I used to do it on December 31st. I'd look back over my year of dreams, and it helped me, again, shift off of patterns.
Yeah, I find dream journals to be very powerful. And just like what you said, I always encourage people, if they haven't journaled before, to wait a couple of weeks and then go back and look. It's
Yeah.
very empowering. I have dream journals from when I was in high school, and I'll occasionally go back and look at them. And now it makes sense. At the time, I was like, "Why am I dreaming about this weird thing?" But now it makes sense. But I know a lot of people don't like to write, and the great thing about our technology is that most people have a voice recorder on their phone. So if you don't want to write, just set your phone next to on your nightstand or next to you. So as soon as you wake up, you can just record what you remember.
Excellent. All right. Good tool. I appreciate that. So you mentioned lucid dreaming, and this is one of the things I want to ask you about is in the sort of general term of dream magic, is if you're looking to accomplish something through your dreams, is that specifically lucid dreaming, or is lucid dreaming one technique and there are other ways to maybe access higher information?
I think it's one technique. It's a very powerful technique. Lucid dreaming is typically defined as being in a dream and being aware that you're in the dream. And sometimes that means that you can control what happens in the dream, but not always, because a lot of times what happens is the minute you realize you're dreaming and you're aware of it, you get really excited and then it breaks the connection with the lucid dream. So sometimes you may start out as just being aware that you're in a dream, but may not be able to change anything that's happening. But the more that happens, the more you'll get to the point where you can change it. And I think, for me, lucid dreaming, it can provide answers, but sometimes it's just fun, right? I can fly. That's great. Sometimes it's a way to work out conflicts or challenges that you're having in your everyday life in a safe kind of space. And sometimes people will use lucid dreaming as kind of like a jump off to astral projection as well.
Oh, I see.
So, but
Okay.
you can get prophetic dreams that come to you without trying to lucid dream. So there's a lot of different things you can do.
Okay. So, say I want to contact dearly departed. What are some suggestions on that? I mean, obviously,
So-
everybody is going to buy your book, Dream Magic. So I'm just tapping in a little bit. I'm asking for a little preview.
Sure. Well, I think the first thing is just being open to that as a possibility. And I think that, a lot of the stuff we talk about, the pre-dream work, is setting intention is very powerful.
Okay.
And so I may just spend time in meditation stating my intention. I wish to contact. I wish to have this person visit me in dreams. I think what's really important too is when you have dreams, when your loved ones do visit you in dreams, try to pay attention to how the dream feels. Because sometimes I have dreams that are just dreams. They're my subconscious working themselves out, and it's not really the person visiting me. But the times that I have visitations, things feel different. One of the things I notice is that I'm the only person in the dream that realizes this person has passed away. So a lot of it is intention and paying attention. And just putting it out there to the universe. I really would like to connect with this person. Now, of course, those who have passed on to the other side, I would imagine have their free will as well. So if that doesn't work for you in dreams, there's other things you can try. But I would say be patient, because in our society, we haven't really focused a lot on dreams. So this is, even just paying attention to our dreams is new. So it takes some time to get into that space.
I agree with you. And when you were mentioning the other culture, for example, the tribe that did, part of their morning cafe clutch, if you will, like, the morning meetup and to talk through it. I mean, I think it's interesting because our forefathers from Greece were into it, clearly, right? Mm-hmm. And so where did that stop? I mean, why did we? I don't know, maybe things were a little too wild and free and they needed to be contained. At what point did we stop looking at, because it doesn't have to be in any way specifically magic. I mean, dreams happen whether you believe in magic or not. So
yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think, a lot of the things that occurred, like in ancient Greece, for example, and even in the British Isles, because the Druids had their own practices related to dream magic.
Right.
I think, a lot of what happened is when Christianity or other religions took over, a lot of those things were now suspect and weren't necessarily aligned with that religion. And so it became very difficult to still have those conversations and practice those types of things. But I think, it's interesting because in our culture, in the field of psychology, dreams have been a topic for quite some time. But in our everyday culture, I think we're very focused on the explainable and not so much the unexplainable. But I think that's starting to change a bit.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you said it well, and I guess I'm asking a question that there's no answer to it. Why? I mean, why do we shut all of that down? I mean, can you imagine what must have been in the Library of Alexandria? Don't you just want to cry when you think about all that lost ancient wisdom? I mean, so that's an example. But again, even Christian or people dream. So, I mean, it's just too bad that it can't be lassoed. And I've definitely heard of different practices where one, it's what you were saying when we were talking about connecting with someone who's deceased. But also other things like, I don't know, I've cited this an example in another a show, but I'm going to say it again, that my friend Michelle was trying to figure out a way to wear these boots and these jeans together. And the jeans were very... were like peg leg, were straight jeans. And she's like, but I wanted to wear them over the tall boots. And then she figured it out in a dream. She figured out how to do it.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it came to her in a dream. Yeah. And if anybody wants to know, she put the boot in the jean leg first and then put her foot and leg into the jean. Anyway, just so you know. But I mean, that's really helpful. I wouldn't have. So I just think that's so fascinating. I mean, similarly, have you ever said, I want to wake up at a certain time? Like, that you're supposed to wake up to catch a flight at some ungodly hour. And then you wake up 1 minute before the alarm. I mean, it's so magic. That one's really interesting. I have had it, especially if I'm used to waking up at a certain time. But yes, I have had that. And I don't know what causes that. I don't know if it's our subconscious saying, hey, wake up, you need to be somewhere. But when you were talking about your friend, it's really interesting that you brought that up, because there are a lot of famous people who have had problems solved in dreams or have had inspiration in dreams. And so one example of a lot of artists and a lot of writers, but one kind of off the wall example for me is Arnold Palmer, the golfer. Yeah. He was in a slump. He was in a slump for a period of time. And he said that he had a dream where it showed him a different way to hit the ball, I guess. And so he tried it and got him out of his slump. Amazing. So there's a lot of people that have had experiences where the answer comes to them in a dream. Well, and again, this doesn't have to be, I think this is citing that as an example. This doesn't have to be witchy. I mean, this is really truly working with something that's happening whether you wanted to or not. Right. So it exists for us, right? And this is I think your book seems to me like a celebration of a way to really be conscious of it. And through that, through something that we do all the time that's happening for us. And so how to tap it. Exactly. And when you were talking about why it stopped, I think part of it too is we're so, in society in general, we're really focused on the external. And it's amazing what happens when you tune into your internal, to your subconscious, to your intuition. Amazing things happen. And I think dreams are part of that as well. Yeah, good point. Very good point. I've heard of practices where you, there's certain Archangel Raziel, and you ask him to show you the secret knowledge, and he will tell you in your sleep. So again, just have to remember to ask nicely. Mm-hmm. Now, what about other tools, such as, have you ever tried having crystals under your pillow or anything like that? Yes. Okay. In fact, in the book, I talk about crystal grids as well that you can put on your nightstand, or crystals you can put under your pillow. I love crystals, and they can be very helpful too. Just as one example, citron, if you have a really bad dream, citron is a good crystal for transforming negative energies into positive. So that's one that can be really helpful if that's something that you struggle with. Amethyst is a great one for intuition to kind of heighten your dream work. So yeah, there's a lot of crystal allies that can be
very strong helpers.
Yeah, thank you. I find, I always try to find a smooth one to hold in my hand as I'm falling asleep. I don't want, sometimes the sharp ones are a little uncomfortable if you roll over on it in the middle of the night. But no, I mean, why not? I mean, it's like my rose quartz is my new teddy bear. So I think it's, I think, again, it's just some mindfulness techniques that you're trying to show us here, Robin, right?
I think that's a lot of it. Yeah, being very intentional and very aware of your dream world and aware of sleep. I think that's one of the problems, too, is I think a lot of people have a hard time getting to sleep and staying asleep. And so that's why I talk a little bit in the book, too, about the pre-dream work stuff to help you get settled down a little bit. But yeah, it's absolutely about being mindful.
You were talking about, to that point, because I definitely feel that I know people, maybe it's sort of an age time or maybe it's the age we're in general. But I definitely know people that struggle with sleep. And I want to ask you about some of the things that may or may not work. I mean, one of the things I've always heard is kind of getting to bed not too late. Do you have a comment on that?
I think it is a good thing. I think there's like my son is definitely a night owl. So you tell him to go to bed at a certain time and he's just not going to fall asleep.
Right.
So it really depends on the person. But I do think for me, a lot of it is a ritual around sleep. And so what I mean by that is we talked about the baths. But the other thing I'll do is I may burn some incense before I go to sleep. And that worked for me. I carried it over because it worked for me with meditation. I have a hard time with meditation because I have major monkey mind. But I noticed that whenever I would light incense before I would sit down to meditate, at some point, my mind seemed to get the cue that whenever I would light incense, oh, we're going to meditate now, so we need to settle down. And I've heard other people say that works well for them too. So finding even just a little ritual that if you're consistent with it, that tells your mind, oh, okay, we're getting ready to sleep, or we're getting ready to do some dream work. I found that to be very helpful.
Really good advice. Because I've heard, it's funny how people read in bed. So we're talking about, I'm very anti-phone in bed or phone or laptop in bed. I'm just like, don't do it. I mean, just don't. But I've actually heard, I believe this was from Deepak Chopra, even reading in your bed gets your mind going. So I don't know. That's interesting, right? I mean, I can see an argument around that could be true because you're taking it in, or perhaps you're reading a novel and there's an exciting story. That's your little alternate reality. I mean, hey, there's nothing better than cozying up under the blankets and reading for a little while. I know I can barely make it through a paragraph when I fall asleep, so that's not a problem for me. But I love being able to share some of these thoughts with people because I think it really is important, and you just feel so much better when you get a proper night's sleep. I definitely think alcohol is something that a lot of people think that having, a nightcap, and it's like,
Yeah, it really, I mean, again, same thing with when you're talking about marijuana. It might relax you, but in the end, it ends up messing with your sleep. For most people, I would say.
Yeah. Okay. So these are tips. Everybody can pick and choose as they will. We're just kind of creating some awareness around this. So, Robin, anything else, any other chapters you want to give us a little hint at that in the books? I mean, you mentioned different cultures, for example. We talked about that at the top of the show.
Sure. So with the cultures, I really took a look at the Oracle of Delphi. And even the Necromantion in Greece, where people would travel through these maze-like tunnels that were meant to be like a visual image of the underworld. But what would happen sometimes is people were going through this process to meet with their deceased loved ones, but many of them would often sleep in the maze. And the same thing, Oracle Delphi, they would sleep. And sometimes they would get, especially when Asclepius, the Greek doctor Asclepius, who was elevated I shouldn't say doctor, but he was elevated to a demigod or a god. They would have people sleep in the temple to get a prescription for medical ailments. So either they would wake up cured, or they would have a dream which told them you need to do this, this, and this. And even like I said, the Druids had different dream practices. Indigenous peoples had different dream practices. They're just very fascinating to me. And I think the other thing in terms of the book, there's just a lot of information. If you're somebody that likes working with deities or guides, there's a lot of information in there. There's appendix with all different sorts of deities and guides that can be powerful allies in dream magic.
Who's your favorite?
And I would say, Who's my favorite? Well, I have a very close relationship with Persephone. I have a previous book about Persephone.
Oh, okay.
And because she is a liminal deity, like we talked about earlier, she was associated both with, being the goddess of spring, but also the queen of the underworld. And so she's been very helpful to me as it relates to having dreams about my deceased loved ones. But there are plenty from all different cultures as well.
Beautiful. Oh my God, I'm so intrigued. Now this is really great. So anything from the Far East? I mean, we mentioned sort of South American, anything that you have learned from what happens in China, Japan, India?
Well, there were the Tibetan dream yogis. And there's a little bit about that in my book. I don't know the specifics of how they worked, but they really used dreams as a way to for spiritual evolution, to continue to work through karma and things like that. And there is, I believe, a deity or two in the book, and I can't remember their names right now, but that come from the Far East that are, cultural deities in those areas, which can be helpful as well.
Okay, cool. That, again, you're giving us lots of things to consider and, sort of a jumping off point to learn more. So I'd love to know a bit about your background. I think your website, what your website is. Tell me what it is. Is it? Oh, you have a blog named Phoenix Rising, correct?
I do, and I have a website, Phoenix Rising, which I'm in the process of updating. So just a little bit about me. The reason I got involved with dreams was when I was 7 years old. I had my first dream where my grandfather was very ill. And I remember we were visiting him in Portland, and he was in the hospital. And my cousins and I were in one room, and I had a dream where my grandfather came to me. He had his trademark fedora on, and he was holding his hospital gown behind him and giggling, which is perfectly him. And he just came and told me he had to go somewhere and he wanted to say goodbye. And he gave me a hug, and there was a limo waiting for him. And off he went. And I woke up, and shortly after I woke up, we were told that my grandfather died.
Oh, wow.
And these kinds of dreams kept happening to me until I finally felt like, okay, they're not going away. I just better pay attention to it. But it took me a long time to get there. And in my professional background, I actually worked in the nonprofit social services field for many years. And surprisingly, in the last 12 years, I just semi-retired or retired from that job in January. I was the CEO of a nonprofit social services organization. And it's interesting to me how many times I had challenges at work and I had problems that were given potential solutions in dreams.
Oh, fabulous.
So I really learned to trust my intuition and to trust those dreams. I mean, certainly there's going to be dreams that are not guidance. Or like you said, if you read a story, you're acting out something in the story. But I learned to kind of tell the difference between what was just my subconscious, spewing out stuff and what was something to pay more attention to. And so that really helped me as well. But I also do Reiki, and I read tarot cards. I have a lot of background in metaphysical areas. And this has been one of my strongest tools that I've used for greater development, greater life satisfaction. It's been very powerful for me.
So when you were, the story that you told about your grandfather and the fact that you were tapping into the fact that there were a lot of dreams were happening for you, where were you in your practice at that point? Early days, or were you pretty deep into it? Just curious.
No. See, so when this first happened, I was 7 years old. And I have a rare medical condition. And so I didn't really tell anybody because I didn't want to give anyone another reason to think I was weird or something different about me. And so for a long time, I just kind of just didn't tell anybody, just, under the rug. And then when I was in college, I had a boyfriend at the time, and I was telling him, I had this silly dream that you did this, this, and this. And he said, well, actually, that's what happened to me yesterday. And he really encouraged me to look into it. And I think it's around college that I really started to heavily explore this, this dreaming aspect. I was fascinated with it in high school too, but really started to explore. And I would say probably when I was my late 20s, early 30s was when I really became more dedicated to a pagan path and to really trying to understand this ability, or whatever you want to call it, that I had. and finding out too that it kind of, I believe it kind of runs in my family, because I've had family members say things, but they're not necessarily looking at it from the same perspective. To them, it's just a coincidence. And I'm thinking, well, that's a lot of coincidence.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then, you always run the risk that they think you're crazy, but
right.
I mean, they know that by now, for sure. I own it. I have to say, I've had some prophetic dreams myself. I really have. A couple.
I believe that.
Yeah, so it's crazy. And I mean, I'm sure they're out there for others. Again, that's where maybe writing them down, that anchoring of the dream, like you barely are awake when you're writing it, or recording it. That's a good suggestion, even though I try to really not touch my phone in the middle of the night. It's just like, please, give it a rest for at least 8 hours or 7 hours, 6. So it's, it's really, really great. And these are fascinating tools. And you want to tell us a little bit what you blog about? I know we'll,
sure.
Yeah. Sure. What goes on?
I'm overdue for a blog, but everything from, I really try to focus on personal empowerment and sovereignty. That's really important to me. But everything from that to like tips for low cost, pagany type of Yule gifts, everything from how to kind of quiet that little, I like to call it the little shadow in your mind that gives you imposter syndrome, right? So tips to how to deal with that. I've written about different deities. Medusa is one. So yeah, it's kind of a broad topic, but really a lot of it focuses on how we can continue to achieve greater empowerment and greater sovereignty over our own lives.
Again, wonderful tools, and we really, really appreciate it. So Robin Corak, her book is called Dream Magick, Change Your Reality Through the Liminal World of Sleep. And who doesn't love to sleep? I mean, it's so great. So the fact that we can be productive while we're sleeping, it's a beautiful thing. Thank you, and I wish you so much
every night to practice.
Say that one more time for me.
Oh, I just said, and the nice thing is we have every night to practice.
Well, they're right. Absolutely. And we wish everybody very sweet dreams, right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
This is wonderful talking to you. Until the next time, take good care. All right, everybody. Wow, it's just really great to imagine what possibilities exist in the dream time if you pay attention. I mean, it's all about mindfulness. So this is what I wish to do on Truth Be Told Transformation, is to hope you have a chance to look at these possibilities of leading a more magical life. I'm Bonnie Burkert, and with new episodes every week. Please check out the archives, and please watch Tony Sweet every Friday live on our YouTube channel, Club Paranormal, 3 p.m. Pacific. He gathers the community together. Robert Hensley has new episodes, and we also have a new show called Queer from the Other Side. We'd love to hear from you. Please follow and share whenever you can. And until the next time, shine on.